And welcome back. Here we are to continue working on our new project. In the last video, we set up a form here that accepts an input, and we can click the submit button to submit the form. So how are we going to handle the form data in React? So React has a special pattern that we use. Okay, they call it the controlled component pattern. Okay, you can look it up under React forms. So how are we going to handle that? Well, we're going to use state, and any value that you type into an input, we're going to store that on a state variable. Okay, so let's set that up. So I'm inside my weather component here, and I'm going to create a new variable. Let's call it zip, and then I'll make a setter for it. So I'll say set zip, and I'll set this equal to use state. And you can put any value here. Maybe I'll do 9999. Let's do 94210. Is that the Beverly Hills, right? 94210, something like that, right? So anyway, so I got my zip code there, and I don't see anything here. But what I really want to do is I want to use the zip variable to set the value of the input. So in other words, this variable right here will be the value that we display, and when we type something into the input, we're going to set that value on the variable itself, right? So let's add that here. So I'll set a value prop, right, or a value attribute, right, and then this will be zip. And now you can see that I get 94210, right? And if I type a value in here, you can see like nothing happens. Like I can't type in there, right? And that's because the zip variable is not changing. So every time React, updates the input here, or every time that the browser updates the input, React says, sorry, the only value you're going to see is what is stored in this variable. Okay, so how do we get this to actually allow us to type something in the field? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to set the value of zip every time you type into the field, right? Seems kind of weird and backwards, and it is kind of strange, but this is how it works. So I'm going to go into my input and add a new attribute, onChange, okay? OnChange takes a function, so we'll just type the whole thing here. And this function receives, anytime you have an event object like onClick and onChange, onSubmit, it always receives an event object, okay? So I'm going to put E here to represent the event object. And since I only have one parameter, I don't have to include the parentheses. And then what we're going to do is we are going to set the value of zip based on what you input into the field. And we can do that because the event object knows what we've typed into the field. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say set zip, and then the new value for zip is going to be e.target.value. Okay, so this is the value that you typed into the field. So with this change, you'll see that when I, type into the field, the zip code changes. But also what's happening is the value on this variable is changing, and then we're seeing that value here. And what's great about this is it means that we can put that value somewhere else, and it'll automatically update to show us the value. So for example, maybe if I want to see the value that you typed into the field, I could put an H1 up here and display the zip code here. Right, so currently the zip code is empty. If I type in 94010, then you'll see 94010 up here, and you see it in here. If I was to type something else in here like 001, then I see that up here, right? Okay, so every time you enter something into this input, we're going to change the value on a variable, and then that variable will be displayed in the field, and you can display it somewhere else, right? Or if you wanted to use it, like when you click the submit button, you want to grab this variable, you don't have to look it up by asking the input field what the value is, right? We can just use the value directly, okay? The pattern here is related to the virtual DOM. right? So if React is going to control the DOM for us, it may overwrite this input element, right? And if it did that, if we didn't store the value somewhere, then the input might just show up blank at some point, right? So if something else caused the virtual DOM to, redraw this component for some reason, in that case, you could lose the value that you entered, right? So the way that we've done it here, the value is separate from the input itself. So if this input gets replaced or gets redrawn for some reason, then it will just use the current value that's in this variable. So we've stored the value outside of this input element. And this is a pattern that you use with all form elements, okay? Radio buttons, select elements, any of the other form elements, we're going to use this. Checkboxes, right? Okay. So anyway, thanks for watching, and then we'll continue in the next video, okay?